Hello, this is Brandon Sanderson, author of the Stormlight Archive.
I'm going to read from Oathbringer, the first of the Dalinar flashback sequences. The man's honor guard rushed to engage, and Dalinar felt something stir inside of him, like a thirst, a physical need. Challenge. He needed a challenge. He engaged the first member of the guard, attacking with a swift brutality. Fighting on the battlefield wasn't like dueling in an arena. Dalinar didn't dance around the fellow, testing his abilities. Out here, that sort of thing got you stabbed in the back by someone else. Instead, Dalinar slammed his sword down against the enemy, who raised his shield to block. Dalinar struck a series of quick, powerful blows, like a drummer pounding out a furious beat. Bam, 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 bam. The enemy soldier clutched his shield over his head, leaving Dalinar squarely in control. Dalinar raised his own shield before him and shoved it against the man, forcing him back until he stumbled, giving Dalinar an opening. This man didn't get a chance to cry for his mother. The body dropped before him. Dalinar let his elites handle the others. The way was open to the Bright Lord. Who was he? The High Prince fought to the north. Was this some other important Light Eyes? Or didn't Dalinar remember hearing something about a son during Gavilar's endless planning meetings? Well, this man certainly looked grand on that white mare, watching the battle from within his helm's visor, cape streaming around him. The foe raised his sword to his helm toward Dalinar in a sign of challenge accepted. Idiot. Dalinar raised his shield arm and pointed, counting on at least one of his strikers to have stayed with him. Indeed, Jenin stepped up, unhooked the short bow from his back, and, as the Bright Lord shouted in surprise, shot the horse in the chest. Hate shooting horses, Jenin grumbled as the beast reared in pain. Like throwing 1,000 bromes into the storming ocean, Bright Lord. I'll buy you 2 when we finish this, Dalinar said as the Bright Lord tumbled off of his horse. Dalinar dodged around the flashing hooves and squeals of pain, seeking out the fallen man, who was pleased to find the enemy rising. They engaged, sweeping at one another. Life was about momentum. Pick a direction and don't let anything, man or storm, turn you aside. Dalinar battered at the Bright Lord, driving him backward, furious and persistent. He felt like he was winning the contest, controlling it, right up until he slammed his shield at the enemy and, in the moment of stress, felt something snap. One of the straps that held his shield to his arm had broken. The enemy reacted immediately. He shoved the shield, twisting it around Dalinar's arm, snapping the other strap. The shield tumbled free. Dalinar staggered, sweeping with his sword, trying to parry a blow that didn't come. The Bright Lord instead lunged in close and rammed Dalinar with his shield. Dalinar ducked the blow that followed, but the backhand hit him solidly on the side of the head, sending him stumbling. His helm twisted, bent metal biting into his scalp, drawing blood. He saw double, his vision swimming. He's coming in for the kill. Dalinar roared, swinging his blade up in a lurching wild parry that connected with the Bright Lord's weapon and swept it completely out of his hands. The man instead punched Dalinar in the face with a gauntlet. His nose crunched. Dalinar fell to his knees, sword slipping from his fingers. His foe was breathing deeply, cursing between breaths, winded by the short, frantic contest. He reached to his belt for a knife. An emotion stirred inside of Dalinar. It was a fire that filled the pit within. It washed through him and awakened him, bringing clarity. The sounds of his elites fighting the Bright Lord's honor guard faded, metal on metal becoming clinks, grunts becoming merely a distant humming. Dalinar smiled. Then that smile became a toothy grin. His vision returned as the Bright Lord, knife in hand, looked up and started, stumbling back. He seemed horrified. Dalinar roared, spitting blood and throwing himself at the enemy. The swing that came at him seemed pitiful, and Dalinar ducked it, ramming his shoulder against his foe's lower body. Something thrummed inside of Dalinar, the pulse of the battle, the rhythm of killing and dying, the thrill. He knocked his opponent off balance, then went searching for a sword. Dim, however, hollered Dalinar's name and tossed him a poleaxe, with a hook on one side and a broad, thin axe blade on the other. Dalinar seized it from the air and spun, hooking the Bright Lord around the ankle with the axe head, then yanking. The Bright Lord fell in a clatter of steel. Before Dalinar could capitalize on this, 2 men of the honor guard managed to extricate themselves from Dalinar's men and came to the defense of their Bright Lord. Dalinar swung and buried the axe head into one guard's side. He ripped it free and spun again, smashing the weapon down on the rising Bright Lord's helm and sending him to his knees, before coming back and barely catching the remaining guard's sword on the haft of the poleaxe. Dalinar pushed upward, holding the poleaxe in two hands, sweeping the guard's blade into the air over his head. Dalinar stepped forward until he was face to face with the fellow. He could feel the man's breath. He spat blood draining from his nose into the guard's eyes, then kicked him in the stomach. He turned toward the Bright Lord, who was trying to flee. Dalinar growled, full of the thrill. He swung the poleaxe with one hand, hooking the spike into the Bright Lord's side, then yanking, dropping him yet again. The Bright Lord rolled over. He was greeted by the side of Dalinar slamming his poleaxe down with both hands, driving the spike right through the breastplate and into his chest. It made a satisfying crunch, and Dalinar pulled it out bloodied. As if that blow had been a signal, the honor guard finally broke before his elites. Dalinar grinned as he watched them go, glory spren popping up around him as glowing golden spheres. His men unhooked short bows and then shot a good dozen of the fleeing men in the back. Damnation. It felt good to best a force larger than your own. Nearby, the fallen Bright Lord groaned softly. "Why?" the man said from within his helm. "Why us?" "Don't know," Dalinar said, tossing the poleaxe back to Dim. You don't know?" "My brother chooses. I just go where he points me." Dalinar gestured toward the dying man, and Dim rammed a sword into the armored man's armpit, finishing the job. The fellow had fought reasonably well. No need to extend his suffering. Another soldier approached, handing Dalinar his sword. It had a chip in the side, the size of a thumb, right in the blade. Looked like it had bent as well. "You're supposed to stick it in the squishy parts, Bright Lord," Dim said, "not pound it against the hard parts." "I'll keep that in mind," Dalinar said, tossing the sword aside as one of his men selected a replacement from among the fallen. "You all right, Bright Lord?" Dim asked. "Never been better," Dalinar said, his voice faintly distorted by the clogged nose. Hurt like damnation itself, and he drew a small flock of painspren, like sinewy little hands, up from the ground. His men formed around him, and Dalinar led the way farther down the street. Before too long, he could make out the bulk of the enemy still fighting ahead, harried by his army. He halted his men, considering his options. Thaka, captain of the elites, turned to him. "Orders, sir?" "Raid those buildings," Dalinar said, pointing to a line of homes. "Let's see how well they fight while they watch us rounding up their families." "The men will want to loot," Thaka said. "What is there to loot in hovels like these? Soggy hog's hide and old rockbud bowls?" He pulled off his helm to wipe the blood from his face. "They can loot afterward. Right now I need hostages. There are civilians somewhere in this storming town. Find them." Thaka nodded, shouting the orders. Dalinar reached for some water. He needed to meet up with Sadeas, and something slammed into Dalinar. He caught only a brief sight of it, a black blur that hit with the force of a roundhouse kick into his shoulder. It threw him down, and pain flared up from his side. He blinked as he found himself lying on the ground. A storming arrow sprouted right from his shoulder, with a long, thick haft. It had gone straight through the chainmail, right to the side of where his cuirass met his arm. "Bright Lord," Thaka said, kneeling, shielding Dalinar with his body. "Kalek, Bright Lord, are you—" "Who in damnation shot that?" Dalinar demanded. "Up there," one of his men said, pointing at the ridge above the town. "That's got to be over 300 yards, Dalinar said, shoving Thaka aside and standing. "That can't." He was watching, so he was able to jump out of the way of the next arrow, which dropped a mere foot from him, cracking against the stone ground. Dalinar stared at it, then started shouting, "Horses! Where are the storming horses?" A small group of soldiers came trotting forward, bringing all 11 horses, which they'd guided carefully across the field. Dalinar had to dodge another arrow as he seized the reins of Full Knight, his black gelding, and heaved himself into the saddle. The arrow in his arm was a cutting pain, but he felt something more pressing drawing him forward, helping him focus. He galloped back the way they'd come in, getting out of the archer's sight, trailed by 10 of his best men. There had to be a way up that slope. There, a rocky set of switchbacks, shallow enough that he didn't mind running Full Knight up them. Dalinar worried that by the time he'd reached the top, his quarry would have escaped. However, when he eventually burst onto the top of the ridge, an arrow slammed into his left breast, going straight through the breastplate near the shoulder, nearly throwing him from the saddle. Damnation! Dalinar clung on somehow, clutching the reins in one hand, and leaned low, peering ahead as the archer, still a distant figure, stood upon a rocky knob and launched another arrow, and another. Storms, the fellow was quick. He jerked Full Knight to one side, then the other, feeling the thrumming sense of the thrill surge within him. It drove away the pain, let him focus. Ahead, the archer finally seemed to grow alarmed and leaped from his perch to flee. Dalinar charged Full Knight over that knob a moment later. The archer turned out to be a man in his 20s, wearing rugged clothing, with arms and shoulders that looked like they could have lifted a troll. Dalinar had the option of running him down, but instead galloped full night past and kicked the man in the back, sending him sprawling. Dalinar lurched from the saddle, an arrow sprouting from each shoulder as his men caught up. He seized the archer and hauled the fellow to his feet, noting the blue tattoo on his cheek. The archer gasped and stared at Dalinar. He expected he was quite a sight. Covered in soot from the fires, his face a mask of blood from the nose and the cut on the scalp, stuck with not one, but 2 arrows. "You waited until my helm was off," Dalinar demanded. "You're an assassin. You were sent here specifically to kill me." The man winced, then nodded. "Amazing," Dalinar said, letting go of the fellow. "Show me that shot again. How far is that, Thaka? I'm right, aren't I? Over 300 yards? "Almost 4, Thaka said, pulling over his horse, "but with a height advantage." "Still," Dalinar said, stepping up to the lip of the ridge. He looked back at the befuddled archer. "Well, go grab your bow." "My bow," the archer said. "Are you deaf, man?" Dalinar snapped. "Go get it." The archer regarded the 10 elites on horseback, grim-faced and dangerous, before wisely deciding to obey. He picked up an arrow, then his bow, which was made of a sleek black wood Dalinar didn't recognize. "Went right through my storming armor," Dalinar muttered, feeling at the arrow that had hit him on the left. That one didn't seem too bad. It had punctured the steel, but had lost most of its momentum in doing so. The one on his right, though, had cut right through the chain and was sending blood down his arm. He shook his head, shading his eyes with his left hand, inspecting the battlefield. To his right, the armies clashed, and the main body of elites had come to press the flank. The rear guard had found some civilians and was shoving them out into the street. "Pick a corpse," Dalinar said, pointing toward an empty square where a skirmish was happening. "Stick an arrow in one down there if you can." The archer licked his lips, still seeming confused. Finally, he took a spyglass off his belt and studied the area. "That one in blue, near the overturned cart." Dalinar squinted, then nodded. Nearby, Thaka had climbed off his horse and slid out his sword, resting it on his shoulder. A not-so-subtle warning. The archer drew his bow and launched a single black-fletched arrow. It flew true, sticking into the chosen corpse. A single Ostbrand burst around Dalinar like a ring of blue smoke. "Stormfather. Thaka, before today, I'd have bet you half the princedom that such a shot wasn't possible." He turned to the archer. "What's your name, assassin?" The man raised his chin, but didn't reply. "Well, in any case, welcome to my elites," Dalinar said. "Someone get this fellow a horse." "What?" the archer said. "I tried to kill you." "Yes, from a distance, which shows remarkably good judgment. I can make use of someone with your skills." "We're enemies." Dalinar nodded toward the town below, where the beleaguered enemy army was, at long last, surrendering. "Not anymore. Looks like we're all allies now." The archer spat to the side. "Slaves beneath your brother, the tyrant." Dalinar let one of his men help him onto his horse. "If you'd rather be killed, I can respect that. Alternatively, you can join me and name your price." "The life of my bright lord Yezriar," the archer said. "The heir." "Is that the fellow," Dalinar said, looking at Thaka, "that you killed down below?" "Yes, sir." "He's got a hole in his chest," Dalinar said, looking back to the assassin. "Tough break." You monster! Couldn't you have captured him?" "Nah, the other Pristums are digging in their heels, refusing to recognize my brother's crown. Games of catch me with the high light eyes just encourage people to fight back. If they know we're out for blood, they'll think twice." Dalinar shrugged. "How about this? Join with me, and we won't pillage the town. What's left of it, anyway." There we go. That is Oathbringer. I hope you guys enjoyed the reading, and I hope you look into getting a copy of the book. The second part is out now in German, and it was our first time reaching the bestseller lists here in Germany, so we're really excited.
While Brandon has done a lot of the world building in your head or on paper many years in the past, that the art will also influence the world building after the fact. So you have this large canon of world building, and then we start working on visualizing that, and as we see it, it may change a few things.
Isaac's much better with knowing on a map, for instance, where mountains would naturally lie.
Yeah.
This is something fantasy authors have problems with. We'll have impossible rivers and impossible mountains and deserts in the wrong places, and having a cartographer on staff to say, you may want to tweak this so the rivers actually flow the right direction and things like that can be really handy.